It's not what Gibraltar voted for, but it's what Gibraltar's government has been preparing for in the context of all of the work that we've done since the 23rd of June and some of it before. We have to understand that some of the things that it is being interpreted, people voted for, in other words, to curtail immigration, not to have the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice interpreting British law, etc., are not compatible with membership, continued membership of the single market and of the Common Customs Union, and that therefore this was the road that the British government was envisaging taking. It's important that we understand that in many respects Gibraltar has been living hard Brexit even the 44 years that we have been members of the European Union. So there are some elements of the future which will present no change for Gibraltar, and I think that's a very good thing.
In case of losing membership of the European single market, for example, that's something that will have an impact on our financial model and therefore create an element of uncertainty in the local financial circle.
Well, I don't think it will have an impact on our financial model in the context of the public finances of Gibraltar directly. It will have an impact on the financial services sold from Gibraltar, or at least in the way in which they are sold from Gibraltar, and it will have an impact which will be negative and an impact that will be positive. So if you're not a part of the single market, you will not have the right to passport your financial services through the single market. There is a middle ground, which is that you may have the right to access the single market to sell your services. And then the other side of the coin, of course, is the positive side of the coin. If you're out of the single market, you're not subject to its rules. So there are things you will be able to do in the context of the way that you structure your tax base and the way that you structure your economy and the services that you sell, which may be very attractive to those inside the European Union who may come out of the single market to buy your services, and to those around the world who will want a European base, and we will still be in Europe for some of the work that they'll do on the shores of Europe and on the shores of Africa, which I think is also important for Gibraltar.
Specific reference made by the Prime Minister to the land frontier between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Can we read between the lines when she said that she wants a sensible solution to that frontier, that the same could be applied as well to the frontier between Gibraltar and Spain?
I think it's important that here we understand that there is a confluence of interest, a commonality of interest between what the new Spanish Foreign Minister has expressed is one of Spain's concerns, what is Gibraltar's concern, and therefore by extension the concern of the United Kingdom, which is the ability of people to move fluidly across that frontier fluidity being the key question for people who come to work in Gibraltar, for people who live in Spain even though they have their businesses established in Gibraltar, and for those who want to travel into Gibraltar because they create business by coming here, like for example the many tourists that come across that frontier. So I think we're looking at the sensible solutions that are likely to emerge from that. Recently I heard a Spanish politician say very sensibly that of course although we would be moving from movement being from one member state to another member state, it would still be movement between the European Union and another part of Europe, and Gibraltar will remain a part of Europe. You sometimes, I think, have heard British politicians say we're leaving the European Union but we're not leaving Europe. Well, in the context of Gibraltar, that is particularly apposite a way of putting it.
Now, what you said in your written evidence to the House of Lords Select Committee, which you didn't say in your oral evidence, was the impact that a hard frontier could have on employment in Gibraltar. Is it not the case that in a hard Brexit scenario, Spain is a lot freer to wreak havoc at the frontier?
Well, not a hard frontier, a harder frontier perhaps, because I think we've always had a hard frontier. You're right to say I didn't give those specific figures in my oral submission, but I told the House of Lords that I was going to let them have those figures. These are not figures which are in some way secret in any way. They are available on the government's website. They have been for some time.
It's a public document, the House of Lords.
It's a public document in the House of Lords, but what is also a public document is the government's employment survey. And these figures are taken from the government's employment survey, which tells you how many people live outside of Gibraltar and come to work in Gibraltar. This is how we have joined up the dots. Now, what we're saying in that document is, look, Those are the numbers we're working with. There's no point sticking your head in the sand and pretending that you're dealing with 4% of your workforce and not 40% of your workforce. But that doesn't mean that you have to have any concern that the government believes that there's a possibility that that frontier could get harder to traverse. In the future, I think what we need to do, as we have been saying for some time, is work in partnership to ensure that frontier fluidity. It is true, however, that anybody who has lived in Gibraltar for the past 44 years since we were members of the European Union will know that for the first 12 years that we were members of the European Union, the frontier was closed or untraversable, or a little less than that. And thereafter, even though Spain had been a part of the European Union and there have been agreements between Spain and the United Kingdom and Gibraltar, there hasn't been the fluidity that there should be on occasion because they've used the frontier when they've wished to apply pressure. Well, that is going to continue to be the position, and of course they should never apply pressure, and that we should deal with this in a way that ensures that we allow people to access their workplaces without any problems.